I think Adam and Eve were together at the fall. I think Eve was deceived. Adam, by the way, we know was not. And I think Adam sat there and watched it all go down, wondering what would happen, wondering if she would really die, wondering if what maybe the serpent was suggesting would prove true. And his sin was abdication. He abdicated his responsibility. What he should have done is said, nope, we're not going to have any rebellion in this garden that I'm responsible for. Right. And he should have crushed the head of the serpent right then and there.
Yeah, but he didn't do it. The first death should have been Adam killing a serpent.
Yes.
Absolutely, without question.
Because this is what I know you and I are going to carry forward, much as Paul does here. The role that Adam had in that moment was different than the role that Eve had. That's what Paul is highlighting here. Right. It's a different role. Eve was deceived, but Adam was responsible.
Yes.
And in that way, he had greater responsibility. The greater responsibility of Adam was not intended to be abusive. It was not he's better than or stronger than or wiser than. It was but God made him responsible for his wife, for his garden, and he failed. That's why it's Adam's sin that's carried forward.
Yeah, and this
right,
is
not Eve. Eve doesn't get the blame for the fall of humanity in the sense that she bears the greater responsibility. She doesn't. It is Adam's sin. Jesus is the second Adam who did crush the head of the serpent.
Yes.
When the first Adam should have done it. But it's not the second Eve.
That's right. And the Eve's sin actually in being deceived, it falls under Adam. In other words, 100%. Adam fails in all three of his offices. He fails as prophet, he fails as priest, and he fails as king. It is on him. So when we speak of this thing called original sin, it is not Eve's sin that we highlight. Eve's sin is part of Adam's failure as prophet, priest, and king. And therefore, just as Corey was saying, when we talk about the fall and the ramifications of the fall, it is Adam's fall that has ramifications to us that bring the threefold sense of death: spiritual death, physical death, and eternal death in hell if left to ourselves.
Yes.
And so the fallen, broken culture, or the fallen, broken world in which we now live in, fallen sin natures, those are not Eve's fault. Those are Adam's fault.
Yes. He's responsible.
Yes. That's exactly right. Which is why Scripture calls for a second Adam, not a second Eve, or not even a second Adam and Eve.
Yeah, it's not that Eve didn't sin or that she wasn't deceived. No, she was. But Adam carried greater responsibility. Right. He had a greater authority. Yeah. He should have crushed the head of the serpent. He didn't. That's why Jesus came to do it for us.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the situation of Genesis 2 and 3 that you're getting to. Now, when you come back to 1 Timothy 2, Paul says a woman should learn with full submission. That word submission there is misunderstood. The best English equivalent I have is deference. I think what Paul is saying here to Timothy in terms of the church is that women should not usurp the authority and the responsibility of men to lead and to teach and to exercise spiritual oversight. Authority in the sense of responsibility. Right. That's still the role of the man, the husband, the father today.
Right.
We see that throughout we're going to argue that we see that in terms of the official offices of pastor or overseer, elder.
And that too goes back to Genesis chapter 3. So in other words, when God is dispensing the covenant curses, he not only says to the serpent, you're gonna end with the result of the second Adam, but then he goes to the woman and to the man and he describes covenant curses that are going to be brought upon them. And he says to the woman, he says that your desire, and again, that's not a sexual desire. He says your desire is for essentially the headship or the mantle of responsibility that currently belongs to the man.
Yes. By the way, that word desire there is the same word used in Genesis 4 when God says to Cain.
Yes.
That
sin is crouching at the door and its desire.
It's for exactly you. Right. It's an evil desire.
You want to remember, sin is two things. One, it is first a rebellion and a rejection of God, and always going to be seen in a wicked exchange. That's why when we go back to Romans chapter 2, it is the rejection, the suppression, and the exchange of God's truth for a lie. And so what he's saying, Paul is saying, and what God means in Genesis chapter 3 to the woman is, your part of your curse that you're going to be living with is you're going to want the wicked exchange. You're going to want the headship that belongs to man.
Yes, and what he says to the man is, you're going to allow it.
That's right.
Just like you allowed the deception of your wife.
Right. That's right.
Right? You're going to allow the usurping of your authority.
Yes. Or the abuse. Yes.
Or you're going to try to overcome that.
That's exactly
and you're
right.
going to rule over her, and you're going to with anger or a domineering spirit or whatever else,
That's
right?
So
try to reclaim what she is trying to take.
Right. So in other words, in both of those, you see a rejection of God's path. There's outright sin.
Yes.
And what you see then is the covenant curses that's going to be carried out in tendencies is the wicked exchange. That man is going to want to hand over the mantle of responsibility, or on the other side, as Corey said, is going to be harsh and wrong. Both are sin.
Yes.
At the exact same time, we can't call Adam's failure, right, sin, and not do the same to Eve. It's not fair. So in other words, if a woman is trying to usurp that authority, that too is sin, just as much as Adam's responsibility to either, or sinful tendency to either abdicate or be overly harsh.
Hey, thanks for watching Theology is Fun. If you enjoyed this short clip and you want a little more theology
and a lot more fun,
well, then be sure to click the link above, which will take you to one of our episodes.